the Automate and Elevate podcast, where we build systems, create leverage, and scale your business. I'm Kevin.
And I'm John Hazel.
So yeah, just to get it started, man. Why don't you tell us like the importance of really automating your business, and what's the huge advantage of automation versus just trying to do things manually?
Yeah, I mean, you can get a long way on sheer grit and determination and just hustling, right? But that only scales so much. Especially for some of it, there's some people in the world who can make that scale pretty phenomenally, but for the most part, um, you don't rise to the level of your ambition. You fall to the level of your systems. And so having stable, strong, powerful systems that intentionally lift you toward the vision you've established is key, right? And typically when we talk about automate or yeah, we usually think of it as like building these different automations like Zapier, or, a piece of code, a piece of software that automates something. And that's a huge piece of it. But there's kind of this personal hacking, this like self-hacking of self-automating where you're setting up your habits, you're setting up your environments to automatically move you toward the vision that you have, right? So that's um that's what I've been doing for a long time is like collecting just all kinds of different knowledge frameworks of how to set up the right systems in life and in business for success, right? And with that, so if when you automate your workflows, you can start to elevate your business and start to hit on these frameworks that develop your strategy even further, that develop your team even further.
So like, what are some of the common problems that these business owners are running into that you're able to efficiently solve using your strategies and frameworks?
Yeah. I think there's a few core ones for me. So, um, one is your communication. Is like, do people actually understand what you're doing, and understand if it's valuable to them, right? So there's a framework I use to connect with audiences, to connect with a target audience, and get them curious about the services you provide or the product you provide. And then there's another framework I use for execution, which is just like, you know, ideas are cheap, execution is everything. And people, I think, get super protective over their ideas a lot of times, and they'll have people sign NDAs and they don't even, there's no substance to the idea yet. And don't get me wrong, like obviously there's been stories where, people have invented something and then somebody else took it and the actual inventor fades into existence. I actually use this daily. I love daily calendars. It's a recent discovery. A year ago, I just happened to like I signed up, I filled out this form and they said I'd get a free daily calendar, and it was the history of the internet, and it was great. So all through 2025, I enjoyed every day learning something else about history of the internet and technology. And at the end of 2025, I was kind of sad that that calendar was over. So I went online and found another one, a couple other ones, and one of them is "Wish I'd Thought of That," and it's like a new invention every day. I really like that. And the other one is Morning Brew Daily Puzzle Calendars, and so every day I'll go through those. Today was about the game of Monopoly, and it was actually back in 1903, this American anti-monopolist, Lizzie, I don't know if you say Maggie or Meiji, created a game based on the streets of Atlantic City, New Jersey, called the Landlord's Game. And it was literally like a contradiction to Monopoly. The idea was like to teach people like the dangers of Monopoly, and then somebody else got it and reinvent. She sold it, I think, or something. He reinvented it and then later sold it to Parker Brothers. Making millions, but she, the original inventor, only made $500 off of it. So there's legitimacy to protecting your idea and thinking about where it's going. But at the same time, if you're not like processing it with people, then it's probably not going to get off the ground, because execution is everything. And so we need to be less afraid of somebody taking our idea and more afraid of us killing our own idea by never moving on it. Because and so um, I have a community of tech entrepreneurs, and I like to run things by them and continue to process these different ideas to see what's the right one, right? Um, anyway, how did I get off talking about that?
So yeah, just to kind of dive into that further, like on what levels are you really providing frameworks and strategies? Obviously, like there's a conceptual level, and then maybe there's a technological level, business strategy level. Like, or what levels are you creating these systems for automation?
Right. Okay. That's what I was making the point that like ideas are cheap, execution is everything. So the idea piece. So after the idea with the execution, I use another framework that is about setting scoreboard, like setting clear goals of where you're going, setting scoreboards, and having accountability and making sure that you can execute. Right. And then on a granular or almost atomic level, there's another framework I use that helps you break things down, because a lot of times we have a bunch of projects sitting on our to-do list, and we end up procrastinating and like hesitating when we look at the to-do list, because we haven't fleshed those out into what is the very next action I need to take on this. And so the way we end up finally unblocking those projects is usually when we have an hour or 2 or 4 hours, and we can just like lock in and figure out the next actions and like and start to knock out the project, right? But if we have the right rhythms where we automatically break down any large project into smaller actions, so we know, okay, this is the next action, then all of a sudden we can optimize our life. And when you only have 5 minutes, you can actually be productive with that 5 minutes, instead of like staring at your phone thinking I should be productive but I don't know what to do right now, right? And then we can kind of rein in those infinite scrolling habits on social media and everything else, right?
Yeah, getting started, I think that's probably the biggest impediment for most people. They have like a million different excuses for getting started, but I find once you do get started, you can always gradually improve and get better over time. But it's just starting is important. Before you can even design a system, you have to get going first.
Yep. And that's why we're starting this podcast, and that's why we said, okay, every Wednesday night at 7:30, like we're gonna make this happen, you know. um we put that rhythm in place, right? And for me, I find that weekly rhythms are very powerful. Bi-weekly rhythms are fine if there's an something you're doing, like you're alternating each week. So it's like every week on this night I'm doing either this or this, and I'm just alternating it, right? But it's hard when you don't create that consistency.
Yeah, I mean, without consistency, you can't really do anything because you're just gonna stop. So, I mean, just being able to be consistent, and I think the main way of doing that is you have to kind of build an environment that encourages it. Like, just for example, even with this podcast, have your equipment already set up, have everything ready to go ahead of time so you can dive in without a bunch of impediments. And, when you have impediments, you start making excuses.
Yep. Yeah, exactly. Um, I love the model, the working genius, and basically we all have two geniuses, two competencies, and two frustrations. And of those six things, like those are all the six different things that need to happen to get something done. And so it's important, to know your coping mechanisms for the things that are your frustrations, and to know also who around you has those things as geniuses. So I have invention and wonder as as geniuses, which are all ideation, but tenacity is a frustration for me. And tenacity is like checking the box and getting it done. And so that's why you and I are working together on this podcast, because you have tenacity as a genius. So I know Kevin's going to text me, I can't skip out on this because of other things I've got going on. Like, you're going to hold me accountable to this, right? So it's partially knowing yourself and then putting yourself around the right people.
Yeah, I think having a team definitely makes it easier because there's only so much time in a day. There's only so much that one person can do, and without a team of people, there's no corporation, no massive corporation. That's just one person. So it's just a collective of people, with different talents, different strengths, all combining to get something done. And I know for a lot of people when, they want to become an entrepreneur, they go in it solo, but I think a lot of them would be more better served if they found one or two other people who kind of have a strength that they're weak at and had a collective. That way, you have people who are holding each other accountable and you're able to more focus on what you want to do and they can focus on what they want to do.
Yeah, exactly. We all have strengths, we all have weaknesses, and it's tempting to be like, well, let me train on my weaknesses and be better on that. And like that's an important thing, but you ultimately need to cover your weaknesses with other people in a business environment. You can only go so far when you're just stretching yourself and trying to handle your weak areas on your own.
Yeah, I think if you spend all your time working on your weaknesses, sure you're going to get better at them, but that's time that could be spent fortifying your strengths. And if
Exactly.
all you do is work on your weaknesses, you're going to be like mediocre at everything
Yep.
versus like having like a really strong suit. So like in terms of let's just say assembling a team, you've been able to assemble a team with your business. How did you go about approaching people and how did you go about evaluating whether they would be a good fit for what you're trying to do?
Yeah. Um, Well, for certain types of team members, I actually go to a certain platform to hire somebody full time, and I have a very specific process there. On I take them through, I post the job post, and then I take each person that's interesting to me through a series of 4 different emails back and forth, asking them different questions, and then I actually do a test project. Really, it's like 3 or 4 test projects, which I pay them for, but it's I get to really see their real world work and see if that's a good fit. And so by the time we get through the test projects, in addition to having really felt out their communication style, what the just the vibes from those emails, and then additionally like seeing real world work from them and seeing if that aligns with what I need for the role, that's fantastic. I don't always have that opportunity. Sometimes I'm just networking with people and I meet someone and they say, oh, I do this, and I'm like, oh, I actually need somebody who does that. And then usually I'll just kind of take a chance, and I try to be careful like what I'm committing to and be clear about like, all right, we're going to do a 30-day trial or a 60-day trial or whatever, um, and not to overcommit. But you just don't know sometimes until you explore and see what happens, right? Um, but those are the primary 2 ways I've brought team members on. It's been friends of mine that I bring on a contractor, um, just part time hourly uh, engagement, and then people that I hire full time off a certain platform, and um, and then networking. You just never know who you're going to meet when you're out there networking.
So just in terms of like your personal experience, have you had more success with bringing on people that close friends, or more so success like going to maybe a freelancing platform where it's quote unquote professional looking to provide a service?
Yeah, it depends on what I'm trying to do, and uh, it depends on the platform. So I'm not going to say like every platform is great. The platform I use, I hire full-time team members out of the Philippines on onlinejobs.ph. And the guy who created it, his name is John Jonas, and he's brilliant. And so I like literally followed his strategies to a T. He has an online course I took. I followed those strategies and I've had wild success with that. And it's economically advantageous for both me and the remote workers I hire in the Philippines. It's been fantastic. The contracting people locally, I have a much harder time with, because with I can actually afford, um, as a boutique agency, I can afford these remote workers in the Philippines to work full time for me, and we can get a lot more done. I can train them, and they're able to do a variety of different things for me. And the people that I hire locally are amazing, but obviously, I can't usually, like, I can't hire them full time, and so we're trying to do a lot in a small amount of time, and it just takes much longer to ramp up because of that. So it's important to be in it for the long game. um, but there's, usually I'm hiring people that know me, or we're a little bit more culturally in sync, and so there's a little less friction there. Um, so it just depends on what I'm trying to, like, what hole I'm trying to fill in the business and how they're going to support. And so both are successful in different ways. And I also have a heart for helping people learn, because I'm self-taught for the most part, and so I want to create opportunities for other people to learn, and I want to train other people up. And so so I'll work with people. They may not be making a lot of money working with me, but they're learning a lot and they're excelling, um, or they are making good money and they're able to work, um, you know, a lot and get a lot done, and be fruitful. So it really depends on the area of the business and what you need.
So yeah, I know we kind of mentioned just getting started. A lot of people are losing their jobs, and as we're seeing, you can't necessarily depend on corporate America to be stable, to continually provide you income. So I think now more than ever is a time for people to get their own thing started. So if you were, let's just say you were in corporate America and you before you lost your job, you say, "Hey, I want to get a business rolling." Like, how would you go about that? Where would you start at?
Um, yeah, I mean, the gig economy is going to continue growing, and I see that expanding in additional directions. I think Uber and DoorDash and Lyft and stuff is all just the beginning of that. I think we're gonna have a lot more of that. So there's that, because the idea there is an established platform that you can jump on and start making money fairly quickly. Freelancing platforms are a little bit different, because you still have to, like, submit proposals, you still have to get the work, and you have to build up your profiles, and that takes time. Um, so there's that side of things. But then, my vision and what I want for people is to just be able to monetize your skills and your passions instantly, like, as fast as possible. I want to help reduce the friction on that for people. And so um, it's kind of complicated. You have to go to your state Secretary of State website and register for an LLC, and you need to set up business bank accounts, because you want to keep things separate from personal. Depending on what you're doing, you likely need some form of insurance to protect yourself, your business, right? The purpose of filing the LLC, the really important thing about doing that early on, is so that you can separate the business from personal. And if the business gets sued, they're not able to go after your personal assets, right? So that's, like, that stuff is really important, but it's a lot of steps, and it's at least a few $100s, and sometimes people don't have that. And so but I'd say start where you're at. Like, don't let those things be barriers to getting started. Just start where you're at. Just, okay, I have this skill set, I want to find a way to monetize it. Just start talking to people, and be like, hey, do you know anybody who's looking for this kind of thing? And get that first job, and get paid for that, and then start to systemize and start to work through these things, right? Um, there's a startup incubator called Y Combinator, in California, and they'll say, a lot of times, do things that don't scale. So when you're small, you're doing things and you're not thinking about when this is a $10 million business, I want it to operate this way, and that's how I'm going to start setting things up that way now. Like there may be certain things you do that, but for the most part, you need to think in phases, and you need to just think, what phase am I in and how can I just get moving here, right? Um, a lot of times we can't afford to run paid ads and to do these like, complex or expensive marketing efforts. And so, but most of the time it's free to get out there and start networking, to just go on meetup.com, find places where people are networking in town and go to those. I mean, I literally, like maybe 7 months ago, that's what I did. I went on meetup.com. I found everything that's available in my city for business, and I went to as many as I could. And I ended up finding some places where I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna come every week or every month to this place and meet new people each time. So you just got to get out there and get started.
Yeah, we've all kind of heard like you need to network, and that's where a lot of business is done. But okay, let's say you go to one of these networking events. Like, how should you come prepared, and like, what should you realistically do while you're there to maximize your ability to potentially attract somebody who's going to pay for your service?
Yeah, at a minimum, I'd say use LinkedIn. This is very common now. So you can open the LinkedIn app on your phone, hit the search bar, and there's a little like square icon in the top right corner, and that's your LinkedIn QR code. So they can scan that, and then and then they can connect with you. It'll pull up your profile. They can connect with you, right? So that's a good like instant thing you can do if you already have a LinkedIn. I would also say set up a digital business card. There's a lot of them out there. Hi, hello, blink, dot. There's a bunch of them. So just set up something, a digital business card. Um, or you can just go to a QR code generator and create a QR code that goes to your website or your Instagram or whatever you have, your Facebook page, whatever you've created and got done so far. Um, so you want to have something. You want to have some way to connect, and that's something you can do instantly. So if you go on Meetup.com, you see a networking event for tomorrow. All of your preparation needs to be is like create a QR code that connects to your whatever web presence you have out there. And then, there's a lot of people that are old school and they like to have a physical business card. So when you get a chance, just go on Canva or something and create a business card. Use a template, keep it simple, and get some of those printed. It's not a ton, not expensive. On Canva, you can, I think it's $25 for 50 cards, which is kind of expensive, but it's convenient to like design it in Canva and print it. And then if you go to like Got Print, I think is the one I used recently, it's like $30 for 500 business cards, and then you're set for a while. So, um, and then you don't have to have everything polished, but just know why you're there. What's the number one skill that I have to offer, and how do I talk about that? And so I would just practice. You know, you can practice with a friend and talking about it and get it like a little bit refined so you know what you're talking about. But over the weeks and months, you'll start to develop an elevator pitch where you'll get better and better at being able to explain clearly who you are, what you offer in 30 seconds. StoryBrand is very helpful for this, and using AI with StoryBrand. So I will literally stream of consciousness, just type into Claude or ChatGPT or Gemini, whatever. Hey, this is what I'm wanting to do. This is what I'm thinking. I'm going to, a networking meeting tomorrow, and I want to flesh this out into a more clear and simple, can you provide some bullet points of how I should be? And then just brainstorm it back and forth. Like, no, that doesn't sound quite right. I'm thinking more in this direction. This is who and don't overcomplicate it. Don't try to polish it. Just chat. Just go back and forth. And you can do the same thing with a person. And there's like, there's advantages to both. I usually will verbally process stuff with people, and then I'll also process it with AI. Um, and just get something down, get like 3 bullet points, get them kind of locked into your mind of things that you're going to talk about. So that way you come into conversations prepared. And then when you're at a networking meeting, just be listening out for different things. And you're listening for two things. People that might need your service, obviously, but also people that are um, kind of what's the word I'm gonna look for? Basically, um, adjacent is the word I'm thinking, like really close to your skill set or your business, because you'd be surprised. You might meet somebody who seems like a competitor or seems, they're adjacent to your skill set, and that may seem uninteresting to you because you're trying to find new business, but it turns out there could be a synergy there that's very unexpected. I've had a lot of business referrals come from people that looked like competition when I was at the networking meeting, but it turns out they're like somewhat adjacent and they're able to direct a lot of people my way.
So like you kind of mentioned, okay, these people are adjacent. How do you kind of lower their guards to where they're not considering you competition, to where they actually say, hey, I got a little overflow. I can't necessarily handle this particular thing that they're asking for. I'm gonna hand it over to you. Like, how do you not come across as somebody who they look at as like direct competition and therefore they're withholding?
Yeah, I guess I've usually not had that challenge mainly because I do so many different things that I can, I'll kind of like talk and align with what they're saying, but then I'll go this other direction and they'll be like, oh, that's interesting, and just show that we're all multi-dimensional people, and it can be easy to see someone as one dimensional based on the first thing you hear about them, right? So, just be human, don't have expectations, just talk and see where it goes.
Okay, for my final question before we close it out. So, I know procuring a client, like that's one probably arguably the most important thing of this, because if you can't get a paying customer, then you're not making money. So what's the point of starting a business? So realistically, how long should someone expect to take, and what is the exact like process? Like psychologically, you're probably going to get rejected a lot of times, so how do you keep blasting through that and know that you're on the right track to getting your first customer?
Yeah. I mean, get good at hearing no, and always being ready to walk. Never like you're never attaching that to your identity. You can't attach that to your identity, right? You can't have that rejection mean that that you're being rejected and that you don't have value. So it just may not be a good fit, and it also may be good feedback, whether it's direct or implied. Good feedback that like, okay, I need to improve my sales process. I need to improve how I communicate in this process. I need to improve how I present myself and my services and my business. Um, and you just keep refining and um, you have to stay resilient because there's going to be a lot of no's. There's going to be a lot that just doesn't work out because maybe they're not actually your they looked like your target audience, but they're really not your target audience. Um, so you go from having like prospects that's like, okay, when I walk into a networking event, in theory everybody might be a prospect, to then like leads where it's like, okay, this person actually said they're looking for my service, to qualified leads. It's like they really need what I have to offer, um, and and we're aligned. They have the funds to pay for what needs to be paid for my services, and so um, you I think the main thing is like with every networking meeting, I'm trying to schedule between 1 and 3 one-on-one meetings, within the next 2 weeks. And so that way I'm like always having these follow-up conversations and going deeper with people and seeing where there might be alignment, right? And eventually you have to call to action. You got to close the deal.
Man, that's a fantastic note to end this one on before we get out of here. What did you want to leave our audience with?
Yeah, this is called the Automate and Elevate podcast, and so we're going to continue talking about automating your workflows through systems and frameworks. elevating your business strategically, and creating leverage. So I'm excited. Let's keep going.
Absolutely. And we'd like to thank everybody for tuning in. Catch y'all next time.